All right. Greetings and welcome to Obscuria Filmcast, where we discuss obscure films, cult classics, movies that bombed in the box office, that were trashed by critics and audience members alike, but that we, or at least some of us here, hold near and dear to our hearts. And today we will be discussing, Seth.
We're going to be discussing this on episode 12, The Big Wednesday, directed and written by John Milius.
Is it The Big Wednesday or just Big Wednesday?
I believe it's The Big Wednesday, isn't it?
I think it's just Big
It's
Wednesday.
Big Wednesday.
Please click and subscribe.
Oh,
please like and subscribe. We're trying to grow this channel, and if you leave a comment, we greatly appreciate that. We will interact with you guys, and yeah, take it away.
So, The Big Wednesday is a surfing movie.
The Big Wednesday?
It's Big Wednesday.
Thank you.
Wednesday.
It's Big Wednesday. Okay. So Big Wednesday is a surfer movie written by John Milius. And if you've ever wondered why Charlie don't surf in Apocalypse Now, it's because Apocalypse Now is written by John Milius. And he loves to surf. So this is a really personal movie. He made it in between Apocalypse Now and Conan. And they thought Big Wednesday was going to be such a big hit that they swapped points. Milius gave his points to Spielberg. Spielberg got points from Lucas, and Lucas gave his points to Milius on Star Wars, Big Wednesday, and I guess
1941?
Not 1941. I'm guessing
American...
it was Close Encounters. I think it was Close Encounters.
Close Encounters
was
77. It was Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And So
Seth, tell us just how badly this movie did in the box office.
This movie did terribly in the box office. It was abandoned for some reason by Warner Brothers. They showed faith in it during its making, based off the Milius documentary, which is free on Netflix. And it bombed terribly. What did it make? It made like
the budget was 11 million and the box office was 4.5 million.
$4.5 million, and they spent $11 million.
And it's also really hard to believe that this film only cost them $11 million, even in 1978.
1978.
It's really hard to believe that it didn't cost more because the production value is so freaking insane.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to see a movie with like really beautiful surfing in it, and camera work with the surfing, that's not a documentary, then Big Wednesday is your way to go. Because until Big Wednesday came along, it was all like beach blanket bingo and like movies.
Like
Frankie Valli movies had surfers in it, and this was going to be a serious surfer movie, and sort of God bless you, Sean.
So why do you love this movie, Seth?
I think this movie is like, I think it just takes guts to make a really personal film about your coming of age and the time you grew up in. It's set in the 60s during the Vietnam era. And it's about having a mentor, this guy Bear, who knows when the winds are going to change and the big waves are going to come. And he makes their boards for them. Mm-hmm. What was that?
The swells. They keep on using this word swell.
The swell, yeah.
And I don't know what it.
So you must not be an avid surfer, Sean.
No, I'm more of a sporter.
Have any of you guys ever surfed?
No, have you surfed?
No, but I know a lot out here.
Yeah, I have a bit. I have a handful of good friends that are hardcore surfers, and they've punished me by taking me with them. And I've had one successful experience, and the rest have been just, wiping out. I never really got into it, and I've never been a strong swimmer, and I've never been particularly comfortable in big waves in the ocean for that reason. But I did manage to surf a handful of times, and I totally understand the beauty and the poetry of it, and when I caught my first wave, like I got it. I got why people are obsessed with this and why it's like a religion. And it's, as far as, sport, outdoorsy cult type of things, surfing is one of the most interesting,
Yeah, this is definitely a cult film. Like if you look at,
and surfing is a cult activity,
and it's a cult activity. Yeah.
And I think go ahead, Seth.
I would say Milius is kind of a cult director.
Yeah,
too.
That's
Yeah.
true. And I could see why it's a cult movie, because without any spoilers, not much happens. The surfing, as I saw it, was more of a backdrop to these people's lives, and that's the only common denominator that kind of wraps them up. And it didn't really it was like how, like, to me, it's like surfing was more poignant to the story in Point Break than surfing was to the story of Big Wednesday. And let me just say,
how do you mean that? Like, how so?
Because the story could have been told by a bunch of basketball players or skateboarders or rollerbladers or
drag racers,
it's polo or ice fishing, drag racers, or like underwater polo or like rock climbing, any sport.
Even guys who play Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah.
It could have been that. That could have been that sounds like a great comedy, actually. And I'm not kidding.
Well, now would be a good time just to let everybody know, as we start to get into more of the details of this film, that if you don't want any spoilers, go ahead and hit pause and then come back. And
but let me make
you wanted to make one more point before that?
Yeah, to advocate to watching the movie, because you see Gary Busey.
Oh yeah, young Gary Busey.
I love him. Two, there's a lot of abs in this, ladies. You see 3 blonde dudes, and they're all different types of great bodies, because Gary Busey's wide and Jan is like slender, and William Cat is like in between.
If you like hunky blonde guys,
it's like an Abercrombie movie.
What?
They're like all blonde and like sculpted, but like not overly sculpted.
No, yeah,
it's the kind of physique that women always say is their favorite, overwhelmingly.
Lean
and athletic.
Even if
it's not a Beastmaster physique.
It's
not a Conan the Destroyer physique.
No.
Well, it's not a bodybuilder physique. It's a surfer.
Next door.
Athletic physique.
Look at you. But we're not going to spoil the movie with the spoilers.
Yeah, and even if we did, honestly, it's still worth watching. If you watch this the whole way through now without pausing it, it's still worth watching, knowing everything that happens in the movie doesn't really affect it. Because it's just sort of like an adventure, and it's like a fun movie. I don't know.
Yeah, it's similar to like Breaking Away, with the way they are about what?
Man, I love Breaking Away. That got nominated for Best Picture and Best Director, and it was the next year.
I'm not even familiar with that. What is it?
It's a movie about guys who don't go to college and live in a town with a quarry that they go swimming in. And one of them desperately wants to be an Italian racing biker, but he's an American guy pretending to be an Italian cyclist.
Not biker, bicycle.
Yeah.
All right. So Seth, do you want to tell us, give us the plot overview?
Okay, so Big Wednesday is about a bunch of guys who gather around this surf shop run by their mentor, the Bear, and how they grow up and eventually try to avoid Vietnam, except for 2 of them, the character of Waxer and the character that William Cat go off to Vietnam, which is a big deal because Milius desperately wanted to go off to Vietnam, and he had terrible asthma, so he never got to go to Vietnam.
Why did he want to go to Vietnam?
Because he wanted to have the life that his father had with World War II, and he wanted to have a war. Like he wanted to go to war because he's like a military historian guy, and he like loves guns and bikes and
He wanted to die.
So he wanted to die. He wanted to disappear into the he was like a juvenile delinquent. He wanted to disappear into the wilderness and never come back. And then he had to rethink his life and become a Hollywood writer.
Yes, Sean.
Let me just say this. The Coen brothers based the John Goodman character Walter of The Big Lebowski off of John Milius. That's a fact. So
wait, which one?
Republican.
What? Which character?
The John Goodman one.
Oh yeah, that guy.
Dude, this is
Tomer Shabbat.
Yeah. Dude, this isn't Vietnam. There are rules. Over the line. So that's John Milius.
Okay, that's great.
So that's the type of guy he is. Republican.
That gives you a whole new appreciation for
John Milius wrote Do You Feel Lucky, Punk? Do you?
Yeah.
He wrote the monologue in Jaws, the second draft on it, about the sinking of the Indianapolis.
The Robert Shaw.
He did the original script to Apocalypse Now. He created the Octagon with the Gracie brothers.
The concept that's used in the UFC. Yeah, he did Red Dawn. Did a lot of movies. He wrote a lot of stuff. And if you know him, he's a really good writer, and you start to come to. He's a fixer, and you'll come to appreciate him. And start seeing themes as you like. If you watch 3 Milius movies, you're like, or you see what work he's touched, you'll be like, oh, Milius touched that. In the same way that
it's like a
Quentin Tarantino went over scripts.
Or Mamet or Woody Allen. Like just a very like singular style of writing. And he's brash. I mean, this is a movie about a bunch of guys who are pretty good-natured, that love to fight, they love to fuck, and they love to surf. And that's kind of, front and center in this movie.
That's the movie.
That's the movie.
There you go.
Judy, what did you think?
I thought it was painful to watch for me.
It was painfully boring, right?
Come on.
You guys, I felt like it was probably how you guys felt while watching Zombies last week.
I like Zombies.
I like Zombies.
I was like, I found myself in some scenes like comparing their abs. So that's where like my mind went. I was like, Nolte is like, they cast him definitely for his acting, not for his physique. Like this is just where my mind went. But Busey, sorry.
Oh, I get them confused too.
Yeah, okay. So but then so I really liked the first like 10 minutes, the opening. I was like, oh, it's pretty. I wasn't sure who was talking though. That kind of threw me off a little bit. I still don't know who was like the narrator.
Fly is narrating it. Robert Englund is narrating it, isn't he? Or is it William Catt?
It is. I thought
I don't know. I don't know who it was. They were but there was like, there's a narrator. Okay, it's that kind of a movie. But I thought it was like really pretty. I liked the surf scenes. And then like the movie's about 2 hours long. The next hour and a half, I was like, this is such a bro film, but it's fun in the background. I'm folding laundry. But then when the movie ended in the last 10 minutes, I was like, oh, I feel like kind of sentimental. And I don't know. Nowadays, I watch movies of old and I have this like reaction of like, oh, that's when things were normal, the good old days, like anywhere. I'm just like, oh, people are free, So I get like all like, oh, that must have been so much fun back then. But then like the party scenes, I don't know. I didn't like the treatment of the females in the movie. Maybe it's based on reality, but I just was sort of like, oh, they're trashing the woman's restaurant and that woman's house. And like, she's just like,
not only that, Gary Busey marries a girl in Mexico because her brother wanted to sell her He found a gringo Gary Busey. He sold his sister to Gary Busey, who he left the next morning back to the US, leaving her in the street. She even says, "Please come back" in Spanish. So that was kind of weird.
Yeah.
Did I ruin it?
It is a very broy movie. You're right.
Very broy movie.
It's
pretty, definitely, like, it's for as me, the mom. I was like, it's fun on the big TV in the background, you know, but I was just like, God, this movie's so long.
I was surprised at how boring it was because John Milius is such a good writer. I thought he would have made a movie that was a little more thrilling from a plot structure standpoint, because he certainly knows how to do that. But then I kind of realized, like, I think he was so emotionally invested and so sentimental about the shots and capturing the surfers, and like, you can tell why this movie failed. He was desperate for authenticity, and in his desperate search for authenticity, he managed to achieve it, particularly in that last scene when he had actual world-class surfers doing the stunt doubles for the main characters, plus an actual real surfer who was a sort of incidental character in the story. And I want to get his name.
Jerry Lopez.
The guy with the
Jerry Lopez.
Jerry
My
Lopez.
goodness. Like, so I think in his fevered search for his obsession with capturing the authenticity of that time and his experience and real surfers, he dropped the ball on telling an actual, sort of well-structured, cohesive story, because you can't do all those things at once. It's a hard balancing act. So that's why I say this is a great movie for people who like little, broy adventures.
Because it's
an amazing movie for people who have a deep love of surfing, not just surfing, but the history and the lineage of it. If you're one of those people, you absolutely have. If you haven't seen this movie, you absolutely have to see it. Anybody who loves beautiful cinematography and just wants to see a cutting edge film that just really captures. I mean, I think that there's probably I imagine that a lot of the types of shooting that took place, the way they rigged the different boats and whatever they had to do in order to capture these shots, I imagine that this film not only was like the first film to ever do shots like this, but this film probably influenced the whole documentary style filmmaking that went forward from there with professional surfers, because like these are shots that have become like classic shots, classic angles, classic styles that you see in surf videos, like just like skate videos in the 90s. Like I know they had they had these like underground surf videos that was basically just shots of world-class surfers, and like avid surf fans would watch this stuff. This movie is like a kind of cool story mixed in with like a surf movie, like that just has shots of world-class surfers. So I mean, if that's something that you appreciate, then like this is a really lovable movie,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got that sense too from it, because I was thinking it feels like this movie has so much love in the making of it, and was probably a lot of fun to make too for the actors. But it reminded me of, and I was thinking of Seth, because Seth and I were in the same improv group years ago, and I was like, it reminds me of like, it would be cool to like do like 10 minutes if we had footage from improv, and then like get us back together again, and we just do improv scenes, and there's no storyline, but there's a lot of love and it's fun. And so I got that vibe from it. But I just was like 20 minutes into the film, and I was like, I have no idea what's going on, except that they all like to surf. Then when someone died, I was like, who died? Did that guy just die?
Yeah, that's a major criticism that
Waxman,
Waxer.
Waxer,
yeah, is they talk about Waxer like you really got to know Waxer.
He only made one little appearance, really.
And he's just a guy who's like,
well, he was in the background a lot.
Yeah,
he's assisting Bear.
He's like have many lines.
I think I think for a lot of the reasons that people said, this is a movie that I think gets better if you see it again, if you can believe that, because it really does have good story in it. It's just not well structured or well paced. But if
But
you
also-
when you pull back from it, like now, like I'm doing now, and kind of thinking back to the story, it's sort of like a beautiful family album. It's almost like watching a professional movieization of a family movie. You know, you
Drama.
have a lot of drama, a lot of things happen. You know, Bear, as a relatively advanced in age at this point, or seemingly depicted as a little bit older guy, is just getting married for the first time, and then he gets divorced, and like he's not even a main character. But
And then he's homeless at the
and then
end.
he's homeless,
And
and then
Waxer was his best
he
man.
rises and he falls, and that's an interesting side story. And then you have you know, you do get little details about different people's family lives and how they've evolved through all this, and how they all kind of remain close through all the ups and downs. And you know, it's
Hey.
sweet and it's sentimental.
Yeah, I think what Abram just said makes me like this movie even more, because you were saying like the more you watch it, the more you get into it. And to me, that kind of, because then it becomes like a loop. It kind of starts where it ends.
Yeah.
You know, like surfing in the end, because it is like 15 minutes or 12 minutes of straight surfing with music in the end. Even my girlfriend was like, what's the movie? Even I played the movie. She was going to come in 20 minutes later. I said, don't worry, you didn't miss anything. But I could see what Abram was talking about, especially how it was structured, because it started in 1962. You had a bit of the story. Time jumped to 1965. Time jumped to 1968. That's where they all get drafted. Then time jumped to 1974. They all come back. So if you know, I guess you could keep on watching it, and it like just goes in this time loop. But also the same year, there was a little movie called The Deer Hunter that won Best Director and Picture and Supporting Actor. And it's the same story as Big Wednesday.
That's interesting, man. That's so
Group of
interesting.
kids
It's also that's another movie
Go
that's
back.
unbelievably
Same
long.
year.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that came out the
That's
same year.
perfect.
And I could see in an alternate universe if let's say that there was a little bit better publicity behind Big Wednesday. It didn't have that god awful preview, the worst movie preview I've ever seen in my life. It ruined the film. It gave away the ending. The preview gives away the ending. I don't know how many of you guys watched the theatrical trailer, but the trailer was god awful. And
Yeah,
it basically misled you about what the movie's about, and then it showed you the very end of the movie in the trailer, where the guy wipes out in the big wave. And so that was horrible. So I imagine an alternate universe where this had much better publicity ahead of it, better trailer, better, you know, whatever. And then another world where they didn't do such a great job with publicity and whatever. The critics didn't get behind Deer Hunter. Deer Hunter is a very, very, very strange movie.
Yes.
I mean, like I don't think I could emphasize that anymore. Deer Hunter is a bizarro movie. It's weirder than this movie, and they're both Vietnam movies in a sense.
Yes.
But Deer Hunter shows you Vietnam.
Sort of not even it does.
Yeah, Deer Hunter
Big
does.
Wednesday never shows you Vietnam.
But that's why Deer Hunter's 3 hours.
Fine, but then if you strip that out of it, most of Deer Hunter isn't really about the war. It's about all these other weird things that happen as a result of it, and how their lives are impacted afterwards. It's a very in a lot of ways it's not really, it's a very unpleasant movie to watch. I've seen it a few times. I appreciate it. I think it's a masterpiece. But I could see an alternate world where Deer Hunter did very poorly and Big Wednesday did very well. Why not? I mean, they're both weird movies.
Imagine taking that premise. All right, imagine a world where Big Wednesday does really well, right? That means he would never do Conan. That means that Arnold Schwarzenegger's career doesn't go anywhere. The whole future of Schwarzenegger, like it doesn't, you know.
Why you think Milius would have been too like?
I don't think Milius would have done. I don't think Milius would have done Conan if he had a big hit with Big Wednesday.
Because he didn't write. Because Conan was more written by Oliver Stone.
And then he rewrote it. He rewrote the Oliver Stone script. Yeah. but he directed every move, every eyebrow lift of Arnold. Like Arnold was like, look, I'm not an actor, so just tell me what to do.
Yeah.
He's like, I want you to show me what to do and how to say the line. And evidently Milius had never had an actor like that, and he loved it. He loved like that Arnold got sub to Milius's dom, to the point in the documentary where James Earl Jones is like, well, I've never been directed like that. I want to be directed like that too. Put all my trust in the director. He says it.
Pay
And
attention to me. I'm James Earl Jones.
I mean,
Sorry.
it's an interesting thing. I mean, and obviously they thought it was going to do very well. His friends thought it was, or they wouldn't have swapped points like that.
Right.
Like they would have never done that. But Warner Brothers put together that trailer. Like Warner Brothers abandoned the movie, like in press. Like they just totally and it's not like today where a movie, like, you know, you can stream it, you can go to the movie theater, it only has one real weekend. Like movies don't clean up for 4 weekends anymore. Like back then they thought, I mean, if they were swapping points with Star Wars and Close Encounters, they thought like that would run like the whole summer, the whole goddamn summer of '78.
And they didn't have, and this is, you know, considerably before home video. And so it's not like people were going to get an opportunity to watch it soon after the I mean, it was going to be
And there
years.
weren't that many multiplexes in '78 either.
Yeah, yeah.
So it would have been hogging a screen.
Yeah.
Like a whole theater, you know.
I did for me in the beat as I was watching the movie, it tried to be deep with the narrations and the beautiful nature shots of the waves, but it was essentially a comedy, especially in the beginning, and maybe that's why it didn't work, because there was a major tone shift. But there was a food fight in the beginning because they're like innocent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they had this that house party where the mom didn't care, and I really do enjoy that one scene where William Catt was talking to his mom like, hey, so just little friends.
Isn't that his actual mom in real life?
Was it? I don't know.
Yeah, the actor. Yeah.
Bear's wife is Milius's wife, I think.
She was pretty cute.
Yeah, I think that's Milius's wife.
And then so there was and then there was a fight at it was weird because there was a fight at the house, but later on when they were in Mexico, there was another fight and it was taken seriously.
And it went
because the house fight
pretty far.
Like, it did, and the house fight was like cartoony. Yeah, they did. Yeah, the cops were involved in Mexico, but in the house it was like cartoony because Gary Busey was getting basted with some sort of barbecue sauce, and he was trying to ramming his head in the oven. And then he comes out like all red when the crashers were coming, and that big blonde dude, I think that guy was big. And they had a house fight, but it was like cartoony. It was like you saw people get hurt, but no damage was done. But then in Mexico, like damage was done. So maybe there was like this tone shift.
I think he's trying to do some.
It was just strange to me.
I think he's trying to do some Western stuff. There's a Western parallel with like going south of the border, and like I noticed, like if you notice when they show up on the beach at the end and they don't know who's going to show up for the big swell.
Yeah. He said he would
like
tell everybody.
Bunch. It's like when they do a walk, they do the Wild Bunch walk with each other, and they say like one, you know, cute little one-liner to the other one, and the other one looks at him, and it's like, this is the last time they're going to surf together. Like when the Wild Bunch goes, and like, this is the last time we're going to go kill together. Like, and I'm sure Milius was deeply influenced by Peck and Paw. Yeah.
Big.
And when you're that age, I think you think of going to like Mexico if you're a Californian kid. Like it's a big deal to be bad and go south of the border and have like adventures with your friends, which probably didn't, you know.
Yeah, and you gotta imagine that a lot of these surfers, they're trying to follow the swell down to Tijuana or wherever.
Yeah.
You know that a lot. There's a lot. Like, surfers don't stay put. Like that's not what surfers do.
Yeah.
Not that there were any surfer scenes when they were in Mexico that I can remember.
No.
But maybe that was implied that there wasn't really any reason given to why they went down there, was there?
No.
It was just like that's what we're doing now. We have
Girlfriend.
No.
I think it's like New Jersey kids. Like when I grew up, you had to drive into the city and you had to get pizza and look at hookers in the late 70s,
Get like another type of
late 80s, early 90s.
yeah, it was like another
Gotta see
type
the
of
bad,
adventure
seedy
for-
stuff.
Hey, wait, I got a question for Seth.
Yeah.
Can you name me John Milius's cameo in this movie?
He is the drug dealer in Tijuana. Just like
Marijuana.
just like and it parallels the drug dealer who is the set designer on Conan, who's like Black Lotus, the best. Like he's a drug dealer in the next movie.
You want the smoky saga? I wouldn't sell Stalker to a slayer like you. But also, Milius put his picture of himself in the opening credits. And he was the last picture. There was 3 guys. The last picture in the opening credits, he was the middle guy, and right up to his face. I'm like, that was
like this.
kind
He's kind of like this Marlon Brando-esque. Like his facial expression is very strange in the picture. Like he's with 2 other surfers and he's in the middle.
Wait, here's a fun fact. It did seem like he was at command, taking the guys out, the soldiers out to make it an adventure. But like one of the first notes I wrote was that, do you remember the name of this production team? Because usually directors just have a production for a certain movie and give it a certain name.
Right.
Like Quentin Tarantino's his was Dog Eat Dog, and then it was Band Apart, and then it was probably like other stuff. But Milius's gave the name for his production team as an A-team production.
An A-team production.
So I just thought that was ahead of its time. I was like an A-team, and I wrote it down. I'm like, come on, that was shadows to the 80s bullet, machine gun shows.
A little trivia on that. On things being named after things.
Wait, hang on a second. I know you're referring that this is interesting because this happened before the TV show The A-Team came out, but sort of my impression that the term A-Team is a colloquial term used in the military for like a particular group of people that are like hotshot commandos.
Yeah, I think it's a commando term.
Commando term. Okay.
All right.
Not
I was getting excited.
No, but it definitely does say something about like the I don't know, the zeitgeist of the time or whatever.
Yeah, it seemed like he was genre building.
I noticed it too because it was very upfront in the credits. It was like the first one, if not the first thing right in the beginning, but one of them, and it was big. And I was like, oh, A-Team, this is like I even had the thought, is this like a military movie or it just like stood out.
They named the operation to get Saddam Hussein Red Dawn, and the teams were Wolverine 1 and Wolverine 2. So he actually has a military operation
named after him.
It's named after Red Dawn. The Stripes liked Red Dawn so much that they named an operation.
It makes perfect sense to me because that's the American tradition. We're a very martial nation, and there's not a decade that goes by where our military conflicts on the world stage aren't reflected in film in some kind of a profound way. From early 2000s to the end of the Obama administration, you had movies about terrorism like every year. There was new movies
every year.
Then that fizzles out, and then you now cyber stuff and Russia and China again and whatever. It's never going to end. But and this is a military movie, and John Milius had a real martial spirit, and he made all these other films that were sort of anti-communist, right? And so
Red Dawn was Meese and Reagan watched Red Dawn together in the viewing room of the White House.
Who and Reagan?
Meese, his secretary. Was he the Secretary of Defense? Edward Meese, or guys jumped around in Reagan.
Yeah.
Meese was either
Edward
Secretary of
Meese,
State.
let me check.
Yeah, I'll check who Meese was. But they watched it,
okay.
and this is a great double feature with the Milius documentary. That's what I would pair it with. I would pair it with that and a cigar. And,
I did see that documentary.
Some bourbon.
Maybe bourbon, yeah, something that's not going to make you throw up with a cigar. Whatever.
America. A nice flag.
Yeah.
All right.
Ed Meese.
No, he's not. Wait, he was the Secretary of what?
I don't know. Just type in Meese.
Defense?
Meese. I think was his name. I think he was Secretary of State or Defense.
So these guys, Reagan and Meese, were huge fans of.
They were huge fans of Red Dawn, and that's what supposedly did Milius in. That's when Hollywood was like, you got to rein him in. Like, it was okay for a while that he was like flamboyant and loudmouthed and talk politics and stuff. But now you got the president and whoever, whatever Ed Meese's position we're looking up, are cheering this and saying it's the greatest, most patriotic film ever made.
I gotta watch this. I haven't seen Red Dawn.
You haven't seen Red Dawn?
Not a flop, right?
You haven't seen Red Dawn?
No.
You haven't seen Red Dawn?
No, I haven't. Judy, have you?
Of
All
course
right,
she
so I'm not
has.
alone. Okay, I'm gonna see it. When did it come out?
Reagan is elected in 1980, and he's around till 1988. I think Red Dawn is 80, maybe 84, 86.
Okay, so this
84.
is perfect. This is
84.
perfect. Right. So if I think about like all of the great popular films that are like critically acclaimed or of special interest that I've missed, the bulk of them are from like the late 70s to the mid 80s or late 80s even, because I was born in 82. What are you doing?
What are you doing?
I was lagging.
Are you doing the note? Yeah, you've been having some trouble today with the film.
Yeah, so I was just
like
doing it until I thought you guys heard me, because it was a while. Sorry.
Okay, well, you seem to be sort of back in action now. No, all I was going to say is that
I didn't.
Yes, one of you, Sean, Judy.
I can't speak. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I
He's
can
not
hear
gonna
you.
hear me now?
But your video is sort of like out of sync, and you're kind of looking like, who's that?
You're a little pixelated.
Character from the 80s, the digital guy and the
Max Headroom.
Max Headroom. Yeah, you're kind of doing the Max Headroom thing. All right.
So you were saying?
So I was saying that like the blind spots, the movies that I missed are between 1978 and 1987. Like those are the movies, all the great movies that happened in that time. I'm finding like I'm catching up on that stuff. And I think it's simply because that was like when I was alive, but too young to like see those movies. And then by the time, I was old enough to see movies, there were all these new movies coming out. And then I would go get into much older movies, like, and I missed all the stuff from the 80s. And there's so many great movies from the 80s. I didn't realize how many, not just great, there's great blockbusters, but there's great indie thing. There's so many interesting, in a way, I think it's like one of the most interesting times in television and film, because it's right before the internet, and it's in the beginning of home video, and the beginning of like, is Sean, how are we doing?
Can you hear me?
I can, but you're lagging. You're lagging, and your video looks choppy as hell.
All right, as long as my audio is good. But yeah, Edward Meese with an M was the Secretary of Defense, and Seth's anecdote is true. I looked it up during the lagging.
So Red Dawn was a big favorite of the president.
Yes, it was. Let me just. I did note that John Michael Vincent got himself into trouble after this movie because he did the mechanic the year prior around. And I did like the mechanic, but Jan Michael wasn't very good. He was a better actor in this movie, but at the time he was like the biggest thing around.
Didn't
And when-
Jan Michael Vincent and Gary Busey both have terrible motorcycle accidents?
Yes, but Gary got a head injury. Jan Michael just like messed
Shaved his
himself
face
up.
off, kind
And
of.
he lost his front tooth, but his head, yes, but his
So
head
that
injury,
that really negatively impacted the remainder of his career.
yes, because he could only land on Airwolf in the 80s, a TV show that was kind of cool, I guess. It lasted 4 seasons, I think. And but Jan Michael's attitude wasn't right. And he was like a daredevil type all the way to the mid 90s, and then he calmed down. But there's old interviews with Jan Michael and Howard Stern
With
in
the face
early
all
90s.
messed up.
Yeah, well, no, that was in the 80s, and they filmed him because Jan Michael had his motorcycle accident, and he was shooting a TV movie, and they didn't need any makeup for him because the character in the movie got beat up. So he was already messed up, and they just shot him, and they just shot. So you could find those stills on the internet. Jan Michael in that movie all beat up, and that's all real injuries, and it was pretty intense. But but there's also an interview with Jan Michael Vincent and Howard Stern on the Howard Stern show where you could see his pissy attitude
with
there.
Michael Catt, right? And Michael, I think he's there in one of them. I think they're buddies. I think they're
yeah, probably. Yeah, I could see that how William Catt also got
William Catt. And I'm like, William Catt became the greatest American hero. And if you watch the Pippin, and if you watch the Pippin tour, the Bob Fosse's recording of Pippin, it's not, I can't remember the name of the original guy who did Pippin on Broadway, but it's William Catt as Pippin with Ben Vereen. Like that's the taped version, and he can dance.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
He's an athletic guy, that William Catt.
William Catt was in a movie called House in 1986. It was a horror comedy, one of the first, and I loved that movie as a kid. So I have a thing for William Catt, honestly.
But you can kind of see why none of these guys topped. You can kind of see why they all went to TV and started doing B movies. You can see.
Yeah, Busey. He was the bad guy in Lethal Weapon, and he was Keanu's partner in
Point Break.
He was the head of the Alpha team, the alien hunting team in Predator 2, which is a good movie. That's a good movie. And he was the head of the thing. Aliens. When he talks, it's like a fucking alien.
Well, we can all agree at the very least that he does something that nobody else can do.
That's true.
But let's wrap it up if you guys don't have any more things to add.
I have a couple little things. In the vernacular and dialogue of the movie, they try to introduce vernacular. I think they said foreshore in this a bunch, and that was the first time I ever heard it in cinema. And Bear said inlander. I'm going to live like an inlander. Because Bear,
they used plenty of surf lingo in this movie.
It was like, it's like Bear was connected to nature, making the boards for the gang of blonde, meaty surfers that we're talking about. And he buys in. Then Bear kind of sells out, but he didn't. He bought in, had a surf shop, had a cigar, a white suit, bossing people around, including Waxer, making him feel like crap. And then in the end, alcohol got him, and he was alcoholic, and he wouldn't want to leave the beach. And he thought that if he saw all 3 of the original boys, the blonde guys, in the end, surfing together, somehow that was some sort of victory to him. So he he let nature get to his head, try to overpower nature, and then he was one with nature in the end. But he was just drunk, because I remember the kid saying, "Hey, man," as Bear was yelling off the cliff, watching the 3 guys, "Are you a surfer?" And Bear's like, "No, man, I don't surf." But it was just weird. He was like
he says, "I'm a garbage man. I'm just a garbage."
Yeah, you're right. And it was but it was how he was the coach of these three guys.
He was the mentor.
Yeah,
I know. Mentor team.
And they called it Big Wednesday because that was the day of the
big surf.
movie. Yeah, that was the last day of the movie. It was
Yeah.
a Wednesday, and that's
Yeah,
why
everything's leading up to that moment, which is the like, it's kind of right on the nose in the best possible way, because it's sort of like, it's
Well, they're
somewhat,
the
it's somewhat
guys who,
anticlimactic in a way. It's climactic, but
mean,
then it's just like just another day, just a bigger wave than usual, like.
if the storyteller's stories are real good, like he's like the cleric, like he's like the witch doctor in front of the fire, and he's always told them about this great swell that's going to come.
Yeah.
So when they all
Like-
show up and it's those guys and the others have died or not showed up, he's like, okay, well, I did my deed. Like,
It's like one of those things, like in like like in the Bible, like the sabbatical. Like, I mean, an event that only happens once every 70 years. You can spend your whole lifetime telling a story about this thing that your father told you about, but you never got to see, but it's coming, and you're telling the younger guys, and then you get to all be a part of it. It's sort of like that,
Yeah. Doesn't
It's like
Bear
it's like the
also-
50-year.
What were you gonna say? You can go first.
No, I was just going to say it's like the 50-year storm in
Mm.
Point Break. That's what Abram was talking about. I didn't mean to interrupt, Judika.
Oh no, it's okay. We started at the same time. There's also that scene where Bear gives him the surfboard,
Yeah.
and then at the end he like gives it to another surfer and he's like, maybe you can ride this one day.
Yeah, he gave it to the kid.
Yeah, it's
Like, passing
very
the
much
torch.
like a campfire story.
if you watch the surfboard that he makes at the beginning of the movie, it's the same. It's the same thing in Conan with the forging of the sword at the beginning of Conan the Barbarian. It's like a direct lift from Big Wednesday. It's like Milius was like, well, that was good, so I'll just redo it. Nobody
Yeah,
saw
it
Big
was like-
Wednesday.
Yeah, it's like he was like
Tricks are good.
Like Big Wednesday was Conan Barbarian's first draft or something.
And Jerry
I did-
Lopez is in Conan the Barbarian.
Oh yeah, he was Sibutai.
He's Subutai, the archer.
Oh.
I dig the broken steps because they went back to
Yeah.
that visually in
That
the beginning.
shot, the opening
like
shot
that.
of them, of that, just that staircase, it like looks
It
so
was really cool.
iconic. Like it looks like it's kind of not even like something out of a fantasy
But
fairy
it's like
tale.
it's like a path from like civilization. They go through this broken path to get to the beach, and they go over it several times because in the beginning they walk it because Jan Michael was like hungover,
Mhm.
and Gary Busey and William Cat were like, he needs to surf, man. Give me the board. He got a board from a kid. Give me the board. He needs to surf because it like sets him right. And he was drunk hopping down the stairs by himself. They made it a point that Jan Michael had to do it by himself, which he did. Everybody else, but in the end, they all came down the thing because William Cat was like an army ranger, and he comes back, but he's just fine from Vietnam. He just needs one surf and no more PTSD from Vietnam. So
Right.
it's like, all right, man, if it's that kind of movie, that's cool. Just stick
Yeah.
to your rules, which they did. I did think it was cool how the guy Waxer tried to get out of the army by pretending to be gay, and
Like-
I just thought that was kind of cool. He should have tried to kiss the thing, but it didn't work. He put on perfume. He did his hair up.
He
while
did
down
Liberace. He did Liberace, put on Liberace clothes.
Right.
Like that was like the big, and he has the great line, if you send me to Vietnam, I'll die. I'll just die.
And Gary Busey got put all in garbage, and he was combing his hair with the fish, and he
The other guy
attacked.
dressed up as a Nazi.
Yeah, and he got kicked out. So that was, I mean, that's what I mean by comedy, but they had that tone shift, and it was at least try to be like lighthearted, because in the end, it was a 15-minute montage with music, which was very verbose. It did not match the theme at
So
all. It's
I
not
just
that
read
dramatic.
that the ABC television movie cut is 35 minutes shorter. ABC
I
cut
see
out
it.
35 minutes.
Probably a lot of the
think so.
fighting and the stuff that didn't really
All those
drive the
montages.
narrative. Yeah, I don't know.
All those montages. I just thought it was like verbose. And those are all the notes that I have. Oh, and I also did not like how all these time jumps. I did not like it.
Yeah.
They were abrupt.
And they were too many. There was 4. How about 3? Like you just try to
Well,
figure.
that's
out
why
or-
this if he had structured this properly, it would have been a TV series.
And then Jan Michael Vincent was a drunk in the beginning, and in the end, he was just fine. He didn't do anything really. He just had a kid, but he was even a deadbeat dad until the kid was like 12. And then he was just fine. And William Cat, I just thought it was weird because these guys, they really didn't change. Like William Cat was just fine. And they really didn't get into what Gary Busey was doing. They just said he went up north. That's it. And then he came back down, and so like I was just like,
that's right. That's why I'm saying you couldn't have made this movie like that if he had done this properly, so to speak. It would have been a television series. It would have been 10 episodes, you know, because they would have filled all that stuff. And that's the difference between TV and film. And he was trying to do it. He was trying to do an impossible thing with this movie, and you know, it sort of worked. So
it sort of works. It sort of works.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful movie, and I recommend it to anybody, but particularly hardcore surfers and people who like dazzling, you know, outdoor photography, cinematography.
Yeah, I could
sculpted male figures
or attractive, like little He-Man looking guys.
Male bodies glistening.
You can play F, Marry, Kill too with the 3 leads.
Oh yeah, you can play F, Marry, Kill. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Jan Michael.
There's plenty of. I'm sure you can come up with a lot of good drinking games with this movie too, if that's your thing.
Let's do Fuck, Marry, Kill.
No.
I just got to say, does anybody remember the movie called Homefront from 2011?
No.
Vaguely.
I'll say this. Winona Ryder made her comeback in 2010's The Black Swan. The movie she did after that was Homefront. She has a sex scene with James Franco, and she plays like a meth barfly chick. And John Milius wrote that.
Oh, wow.
Really?
That was his last credit. I mean, that in Rome.
And was it any good?
No, I saw it in theaters. I walked out because I went. I used to like
walked out. Are you one of those guys who walks out of movies all the time?
Well, no. Let me just say, I theater hop a lot. So I go to a movie, watch it, walk into another movie, see if I like it. Sometimes I stay, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I go into a third theater. You know, I've always done that.
In my community. There's a name for that, but I'm not going to say it because it's not nice to my people. Okay, I'll say it. We call it a Jewish doubleheader.
Oh,
is that what it is? Hey, I'll take that. That sounds accurate.
2 for the price of 1, or 3, or half of 3, if that's your thing.
So remember, we didn't play F, Marry, Kill with the 3 leads, but we did teach you about the Jewish doubleheader on this podcast.
On that note, I
have one bit of trivia left about this, and then so in Robert Englund, who most of you know as Freddy, who's in this movie as Fly, he says that John Milius hated improvisation. He hates it because you know he's a writer. He thinks he's a great writer, and so he doesn't want actors. And he said to John Milius, "Is it okay if I say to him, stay casual, Barlow?" And he let him do that. So there's a piece of vernacular where he's like, "Stay casual, Barlow," near the end of the movie. And that's Robert Englund's contribution to the script of Big Wednesday. And probably his biggest contribution to film, except for, you know, V, which was television. And of course, he's Freddy. He hit it big, and, you know, now.
And he stayed big. He was only
Freddy.
That's so crazy.
He'll always be
I'd
Freddy
completely
Englund.
forgotten that's who that was for that whole movie.
That's Freddy.
Yeah, I know. You guys
Freddy was a
you
little
mentioned it in the
nerdy.
beginning. You mentioned it when you introduced it, and then I forgot about it, and only just now I'm like, oh, yeah.
He used to play Sweethearts until he got Freddy.
When he says Freddy, by the way, just in case anybody's confused, Freddy Krueger.
Freddy Krueger from Nightmare
Krueger from the Elm Street
80s
series.
slasher.
So, okay, cool. I want to introduce a few films to you guys, and you guys vote and let me know which ones. I have a few movies floating around in my head. They're all by like legendary directors. Some writers, directors, some just directors. All 4 of these guys are legendary directors, and all 4 of these movies did not do very well, to say the least. The first one is well, let's see if any of you can guess it if you've seen it before.
I
1984,
could guess it.
Ken Russell made a movie with Kathleen Turner, who plays a high-class businesswoman by day and street-walking hooker by night. And Anthony Perkins plays a perverted priest who is obsessed with cocaine and hookers, and also saving and redeeming hookers.
I want
Um,
to see this.
This is a very, very weird movie. As is, Ken
What's the
Russell's
movie?
never. Ken Russell's never not made a. I've never seen a Ken Russell movie that isn't totally weird. But this one was like really weird, but also trying to be mainstream, and he got really screwed on it because it had a lot of very raw sexual scenes, like very racy stuff, and they made him cut it or else make it an X-rated designation. And I don't know which cuts are available or what, but it's whatever this R-rated cut is pretty racy as it is. So I don't know what he was trying to do. But anyway, it's called Crimes of Passion. It did terribly, and it is one of those movies that I saw like when I was a kid. When I was a teenager when I first saw it, and it was probably one of the biggest cult classics in my little like cult mind. It's a movie I've seen over and over again, and I've introduced to many people, and they've always been really grateful that I introduced them to this fucking crazy movie. Anyway, so that's Crimes of Passion. The other one I was thinking of is House of Games, which is a David Mamet film. It was the first film that he both wrote and directed, 1987. It's one I only recently discovered it. I only really got into David Mamet over the last 5-6 years or so. And this was the first film that he wrote and directed. You can tell he put a tremendous amount of effort into making it great and trying to prove himself. I think it did decently with critics, but it didn't do very well in the box office at all, and the public didn't like it. So that's House of Games. It's all about con artists. I love movies about con artists. This one's very, very interesting and intricate and awesome on a number of levels. The other one that I thought of is Deconstructing Harry by Woody Allen, 1997. Seth and I have been revisiting Woody Allen movies that we haven't seen, or checking out Woody Allen movies. We watched Wonder Wheel recently, and like there's a lot of Woody Allen movies that don't do very well, that aren't like in the last 2 decades. He's struggled with the critics, and he's struggled with his public image and all that stuff. But like Deconstructing Harry is one of those movies that I think pretty much nobody that saw it like got it, and the critics were mixed about it, and it didn't do so well. And I think it's one of his most, where he's really putting in a tremendous effort in this movie to make it interesting. And then the other one that I thought of, which I've never seen, is Martin Scorsese's King of Comedy, 1982. Didn't do well at all. So I've just heard things about it, mostly from Seth, and mostly based on the parallels that King of Comedy has with that the latest Joker film.
The Joker, yeah.
Yeah, and so I thought it might be interesting and of cultural relevance right now based on the plot and everything I know about it. So what are you guys' thoughts? Crimes of Passion, Deconstructing Harry, House of Games, or King of Comedy?
I would. My votes are for either Crimes of Passion or what was the last one?
King of Comedy.
King of Comedy. Those are my. Those are where my.
Judy, what do you think?
I agree with Seth, the first one and the last one, and I'm leaning towards the sexy priest.
Okay, cool.
Actually, yes. I guess it's kind of unanimous because I
Crimes of Passion.
would like to see Crimes of Passion. Anthony Perkins. I don't see enough of him.
Okay, all right. This Crimes of Passion is the most appropriate of all of them.
I mean, I'm leaning toward Crimes of Passion.
Okay,
too. Like,
I think we have our answer.
Yeah, we have our answer.
This is a totally insane, off the wall movie, and I think you guys will enjoy it very much. I'm not sure where it's available, but I think Amazon. You can probably rent it.
The clips I saw, you're like, wow, they have a home in the theater. They came from the theater. Both of those two actors came from the theater.
Yeah. And the lead in this was like a guy who was like, I guess this was his first major supporting role in a film. And he didn't really go that far after this. So, like, I think this was supposed to be a major breakout for John Loughlin, but his character is so weird.
John Loughlin.
And nobody's ever heard of this guy, but if you see his face, you'll be like, oh, I saw him and some stuff. But this was supposed to be a breakout opportunity for him, because like in the theatrical trailer, they're like, and introducing John Loughlin. Like it was like the first time people had heard of him or something, even though he worked before this film. But like, yeah, his career didn't really go that far after this. And I'm sure, I don't know, I imagine that this is a film that he thinks about from time to time.
Yeah.
Stay
we
casual.
all have our regrets.
Yeah.
Please make
Crimes
sure
of
you.
Passion, 1984, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yes.
it's on Prime.
it's on Prime.
Yeah,
awesome.
$3 on Prime.
Okay.
Yep.
All right,
Please make
awesome.
sure you
So,
click and subscribe.
like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
And tell us what you think of these picks, because once we start streaming this live, you'll be able to chime in and tell us which movie we should be watching next.
And you can see my real reactions in real time. I'll try not to be too obnoxious.
Real reactions in real time from Sean. I think everybody's
yell at
looking
the
forward to
screen.
that. What?
I yell at the screen. I yell at the screen.
Yes, you do.
It's bad. I have to pause it and take breaks, but it's okay. I get because I'm there.
All right, he's gone. I think
It's the
this is a
best
good
part of the show.
Good opportunity for us to say goodbye. Goodbye,
All right.
goodbye. We'll see you again
Bye.
soon, and peace.
Stay casual.